Talk to Me, directed by Danny and Michael Philippou, also known as the popular YouTubers Raka Raka. So Talk to Me follows a group of friends who discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand. They become hooked on the new thrill until one of them unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. So this actually isn't Danny and Michael's first time trying their hand at the horror genre. They actually had a lot of success with their ARG on YouTube called Ash Vlogs, which follows a girl named Ash who's a vlogger on YouTube, and she eventually discovers that she's being stalked by a killer. And this was a pretty big success for them before they went MIA on YouTube to completely focus on production for the movie. And A24 acquired the North American rights to the film after it debuted at Sundance. And now we're here, just around the corner from the theatrical release of this badass movie. So Talk to Me, in my personal opinion, is the most well-rounded horror film that's been released so far this year. It's at the top of its game in terms of being clearly cohesive, it's immersive, it's genuinely horrifying, and it gives you that visceral gut feeling, you know? Where the scares throughout the film actually deliver, you know, and the sound design is superb. And ultimately, you just know that someone really cared about the quality of this movie. You know, I felt it in the most non-weirdest kind of way. I felt the blood, sweat, and tears that these guys put into this movie, and honestly, I think it paid off. Now, there were some aspects of this movie that I was extremely impressed by. And then there were moments where I felt like the pacing could have been a little better and the story could have been better fleshed out, but you know, no movie is really perfect. I mean, I have my examples of movies like that, but this movie isn't quite those, but it is something amazing. So anyway, I'm tired of beating around the bush, and I would actually like to get into spoilers for this film. So I think I'd go ahead and give Talk to Me an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. But honestly, I feel like a sweet spot for this movie is definitely an 8.5 out of 10. It was great. And I'm calling it now. This is going to be the most unsettling horror film that you'll see this year that feels like it's going to be a classic feeling horror film years down the road from now. And I can easily see myself watching this again in a month or two after it goes to streaming. But personally, I would say return to the rest of this review once the film releases, because shit's about to get into spoiler territory. So the film centers around Mia as she's been grieving over the loss of her mom. She doesn't really feel close to her father and tends to avoid him a lot throughout the movie, and instead she prefers to hang out with her friend Jade and her brother Riley. Now, we're not sure how Mia's mom dies until the end of the movie, but the film plays a lot on Mia's uncertainty that her father may have killed her mother, and that's like a big thing in the film. And this uncertainty really just comes from the fact that she begins to see a ghostly, horrifying version of her mom after she died that tells her it's her father's fault. And of course, playing on the main character's weakness is nothing new. You know, we've seen this a ton of times in movies, but it truly has a purpose in this film. You know, it's just not used as like a prop point of the plot, like it actually has a purpose here. But anyway, the game that Mia and her friends play with the embalmed gypsy hand is what sets all of these supernatural events into motion. The way the game works is that they put the hand in front of you, they light a candle, they tie you to a chair with only just your right hand free, you grab the hand and you say, "Talk to me." This connects you to the ghostly realm where you're immediately in contact with a spirit that appears right in front of you that no one else in the room can see. Next, you have to say the words, "Let me in," and this leads to the spirits entering your body and taking control. But this can only take place for less than or around 90 seconds, if I remember correctly, and anything longer than this can lead to the spirit being permanently attached to you, which is what happens to the character Riley in the film after he begs Mia to let him play, because the older teenagers are playing the game and he wants to be included, and it's kind of left up to Mia to make this decision. And that whole scene with him banging his head against the table was fucking gruesome and very well performed, which is honestly saying a lot for a film with an amateur cast and an indie film with a $4.5 million budget. I mean, this scene reminded me a whole lot of that scene from Hereditary with Alex Wolff when he was in the classroom and he just slammed his head up against the desk. If they were trying to outdo that scene, they definitely did it, because this scene is just, it's crazy. And one thing that I forgot to mention is that you end the game by letting go of the embalmed hand and blowing out the candle, and this closes the door to the spirit realm. But yeah, the whole situation with Riley was just pretty crazy, and the special effects makeup of these spirits and how they just immediately appear in front of you was just creepy as hell. I mean, it just goes to show you that horror movies don't always have to rely on isolating a character to scare the shit out of you, and I think they did a really good job with that here. Even in the film, after a while, it becomes fairly normal to the teenagers and they just begin to have fun with it, but you still feel the creepy ominous feeling of what they're doing as an audience member. As a viewer, you're looking at this like, damn, these kids are really playing with some crazy forces that they shouldn't be playing with. Like, you never truly feel at ease like the characters do in the film. And the way that they were able to keep that ominous vibe going when the characters in the film are just having a good time with playing with evil spirits and all of this crazy shit was pretty dope. And also, I think the horror film It Follows also has a great example of this as well when it comes to isolating a character, where yeah, you isolate the character mentally and make the threat something only they can see, but you don't have to isolate them physically and put them in a dark room all alone to set the mood all the time. And I like seeing stuff like that. But Mia is desperately trying to find a way to save Riley because she feels responsible for this possessed limbo trance that he falls into, which it is basically her fault. I mean, if we're being honest, she was the one they kind of left it in the hands of and she allowed him to do it. But in the opening scene of the movie, we see a group of kids at a house party where a boy goes to help his brother who locked himself in a room. He tries to help his brother, but his brother stabs him and then kills himself. And this scene of him killing himself is also very graphic, like fuck. And the sound design in that part just kind of hyped it up a lot more. Like, there's some crazy kills and deaths in this movie. I mean, these killings and moments like these throughout the film are consistently well done in my opinion. And the Philippou brothers removed some of the visual effects, believe it or not, from the film to make it more grounded and immersive. So a lot of what you see throughout this film is actually practical effects. So praise to those guys for taking the more traditional route and using practical effects, because in horror films, you know, practical effects just always tend to look better. So, you know, good decision on their part. But this whole moment between the two brothers is very important because just like some traditional horror movies, Mia does her research and she finds out that this situation that occurred with the two brothers at the party is very similar to what she's going through and how it could possibly help her save Riley. And this is another realistic moment that occurs throughout this movie that makes you feel like something like this could possibly happen in real life. Because you have a bunch of teens showcasing themselves on social media, throwing parties while using this hand to possess themselves with possible evil spirits. And in modern day, some kids are just such idiot dumb shits and will do almost anything to be famous, and this film actually depicts a fairly realistic outcome of what that might look like today. It's almost like a Ouija board on steroids, and serious risks are actually involved, like seriously. So after Mia locates the brother later in the film, he tells her that the longer the spirit stays attached to you, the weaker they get. Also, while all of this is happening with her trying to save Riley, Mia has been using the hand to sneak away and catch up and talk to a spirit that she thinks is her dead mom. This ghostly spirit has been telling her that the best way to save Riley is to kill him, but it's trying to trick her, of course. And then the film ends with Mia killing herself to prevent herself from killing Riley, who is eventually released by the spirit since it was unable to kill him because it became too weak, which we found out earlier from the brother who told Mia that the longer they're attached, the weaker they become, which led Riley to surviving. And then we find out in like one of the last scenes in the film that Mia becomes one of the spirits who gets summoned in the game at the end, which confirms to us that she did indeed die at the end of the movie. And just like that, Talk to Me is now easily my most favorite horror film of the year. Although there were some tropes like a full circle story that comes back on the protagonist, or having to locate people from the opening scene to discover a solution, and you know, the character that has to do research and go back down the history of what's happening. That's pretty much in every horror film. You know, it kind of has to be there sometimes, but there's more creative ways around it. But that's fine, because I still love the fact that we didn't get a happy ending, because I'm kind of bored of those to a certain extent, especially when a film already has such a familiar blueprint like Talk to Me. But because it was extremely well executed and had enough originality in the script, in my opinion, I thought that allowed these guys to have one hell of a feature-length debut. But Talk to Me releases in theaters this Friday, and yes, hell yes, you should go see it. But there you have it, and if you enjoyed the content, you know exactly what to do. Thank you for watching.